Bunny Buddies, welcome to another drawing session. My name is PenMark, and today I'm working on a commission for a good friend of mine named Chad, also known as Teddy over on Twitter. I'm helping him design a new character, and this is going to be a character sheet. Today's going to be just the front view, showing the anatomy, showing how I designed his character, because I'm not just drawing his character, but designing the character as a whole, so you'll watch every step of it, and I figured I would just focus on the front of the character so you can see the designing process. I'm doing something different this time. I'm actually spending the whole video, spending a good amount of time reviewing every technique I go through as I draw. In the past, you've noticed I've only done maybe 10 or 12 minute videos because I was trying to save time and I didn't really give myself enough time to show everything I'm doing. So here I'm going to try something new. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and maybe even learn something. I've always wanted to do this, so I'm doing it. Without waiting, let's get right in. You see right now I'm drawing a little bit of a head. I'm doing it a little differently than normal. Right now you're watching the drawing process that I've already recorded, and now I'm talking over it, so this is like commentary. I like this technique a lot better because it's easier for me to keep track of my thoughts as the video is playing. Hopefully this works. This character is going to be a coyote-husky hybrid. And as you'll notice throughout the video, I'm adjusting the body type because I'm usually used to giving my characters a little bit more weight on their body. Meanwhile, after discussing a lot with him, he was wanting a very tall but lean character. So he's going to be actually a lot thinner as the video progresses. And knowing how I tend to do it, he's going to get thinner and thinner as we go. But right now you see I'm erasing some of the guidelines, figuring out the legs, the bottom of the torso. I made him kind of muscular here and gave him really wide shoulders at first. And it's pretty frequent that you'll see me draw something, spend a lot of time, and then completely erase it. That's normal. I'm not going to edit this. You're going to see the full thing of, how I actually draw. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. And eventually I'll be doing live streams. I still have a couple things to take care of before I can do those. I apologize. Don't worry. I'll get to it. I promise. But yeah, I have other things I have to do first. So yeah, I'm segmenting all the limbs, erasing guidelines. But these guidelines are pretty important. Even if I end up erasing them later on, they still help me think. The harder a picture is for you, or the more you're still trying to design it, you're trying to think it through, the more you need to use guidelines. So yeah, the harder it is, the more guidelines. Yeah, that. Because I think I've said it before, it's the way of thinking with your pencil. It's putting your thoughts on the page to look at, so you can review it and go, do I actually like that? Like right here, I was putting some of the muscles on the chest, but then I erased it going, I don't know if that's quite the right shape. But it wasn't really a waste in the end because I got to test it out. So I strongly recommend put lots of guidelines, lots of messy sketch lines to let your thoughts, let it digest, let you think it through. Because a lot of those guidelines can serve as little reminders so that you avoid making big mistakes later on. One of the big classic versions of that I've seen is when you put a whole lot of detail, you spend a lot of time putting all of that detail into a really good hand or a really good, eye or face. You're putting all this detail into it, and then by the end of the picture you're like, wait a minute, that's in the wrong place. I made the arm too long, or that's at the wrong angle. And it's really frustrating that you're I put all that time into it though. And that's exactly why you put guidelines before you actually start all of this. Granted, I've got some leeway because I'm doing digital, but the rules still apply if you're doing it pencil on paper. I know I've talked with some friends who do traditional art, and I understand that like when you watch a digital artist, it might be a little intimidating to see that, you know, they're using all these weird tools and I just have a pencil and an eraser. You can still use what I'm showing you. You just have to kind of adapt it onto pencil and paper. But before I ever touched a computer for art, I was doing all pencil on paper, all through middle school and high school. It was at the end of high school that I finally got a tablet, a drawing tablet. So, trust me, like a lot of what I'm talking about, I learned all of this from pencil on paper. So, and I do want to eventually do some like camera at the desk showing you my, sketch pad and drawing it in front of you the traditional way. I do want to do that. I still need to set up my desk a little better because I need to set up the right lighting so that there's no weird shadow covering it. Because, yeah, I don't have like the best lighting. I have a bunch of lamps. So I want to angle those lamps just right so that it looks good. And like I have so many other things I'm doing at the same time, so I just need to, when my schedule lets me, when I have an afternoon of free time, and I don't really have free time, but you know what I mean, like when I like have some time that's, you get what I'm getting at. I'm gonna digress. Anyway, you saw I did the hands. I'm doing the left hand now. Excuse me. And this left hand is going to be an open palm, so you can see the paw pads of this anthropomorphic animal. And a big thing with anthro is that you have to kind of adapt different anatomy styles together. Because as I zoom into this hand here, you notice that it's mostly like a human hand, but as I start to add details to it, it's very much like a paw pad, like an actual paw of an animal. And you get kind of conflicting muscle shapes and everything, like, you know how the palm of your hand has that big muscle where your thumb is, and yet dogs have a paw pad that kind of gets in the way of that, so you kind of have to adapt the shapes and rearrange stuff. Looking at reference for both animal and human is kind of the best method. Like with hands here, with this kind of paw hand, I'm having to look at my own left hand, but also look up photos. You can't see it on screen right now, but I have some photos to the right of this canvas. I have photos, and they serve as examples of what what paws look like. All those paw pads and the arrangement of all of that. So, yeah, you kind of have to combine them, and you learn it as you go. And there's different styles too. I've seen a lot of different methods of combining human and animal anatomy. I'm reminded of something that I'm going to bring up right now because I see it on this paw as I'm drawing. You'll notice, like with those paw pads, I'm drawing a thick, dark circle, oval, and then I erase the inside of it, and it creates like a perfectly drawn, I say perfect, it's not perfect, but a well-drawn oval, and I'm basically carving my lines. I do this with painting and drawing a lot, and you can technically do a version of this on pencil and paper as well. I put a bunch of messy lines on the page to think it through, to look at it and get the basic form, and then I'll erase. Just, you see me doing it all the time here. I'll be drawing a couple lines and, make it really thick and dark to get it in the right place, and then I'll carve it away with the eraser to make it the right shape. So don't get hung up on really getting it right the first time, or even the second or third time. It's the end result that matters with a picture, with art. With art, it's the end result. So it doesn't really, as long as it's actually you drawing it, as long as you're not tracing a picture or copying someone else's picture, it's up to you to find out what technique, if you need to draw a bunch of silly lines all over the page, or if you need to put a bunch of circles and squares. There's so many different versions of setting up your picture. As long as it puts all of your pieces in the right place, so that you can think it through, that works. And here you can see I'm pulling up some photos. I have to quickly say a note about photos. If you are ever commissioning an artist, which means if you're hiring them, you're paying them money to draw a picture for you, I highly recommend, I can't stress enough how much you need to find examples of what you're talking about. Because even if you're really good at describing your character, you make a whole 2-paragraph description describing their traits, their body posture, the colors in their hair, the color of their eyes. Even if you're actually really good at this, everybody's going to interpret it differently because that's just how people are. So if you can find photo reference of like, I want this color of red, and I want this breed of dog, and I want this body type and stuff like that, that helps artists so much. Because our goal when you're hiring us for a picture is to get it right. And if you can literally show us photos of, I want this kind of head, and I want these eyes, and I want this color, and even if your color is like, you found a picture of a red jacket, but the picture's gonna be, I'm gonna draw you a dragon, if you found the right color of red for the dragon's scales, that's what matters. So, anything you can provide to help the artist will be so amazing. So please, yes, please do that. And I've worked with Chad multiple times here, and he's very good at bringing up so many photos that help me get an idea of this. And as we're working this out, I'll show him something, and he'll be like, "Can you thin that out?" And this is how I go about designing characters. So for me, this is fine that I do a drawing, I show him it. Like we're doing here, is that I'm trying to slowly thin out this character's face and neck, because it's supposed to be fluffy like a husky, but also a coyote, which is very thin and lanky. So now I'm moving on to some of the face details. I did that snout, that mouth, and now I'm doing the eyebrows and eyes, which again, if you notice what I'm doing, I'm putting all those messy lines and then I carve them out. That's been the most efficient process for me when I draw, because I've seen some artists that prefer the Control-Z method, where they draw a line, then erase it, then draw a line, or press Control-Z after they do that line and go, no, that wasn't right. No, that isn't right. I do use Control-Z when I'm drawing, really precise details. I do that. But I think I prefer doing this method that you see here, where I'm carving my lines. I don't know, it's I guess more organic to me. It helps me, I don't know, the process just feels right to me. And it takes a lot of the pressure off for me. I tend to, when I'm doing the Control-Z method of drawing the perfect line, and I have to keep pressing undo, until I finally get that good line, to me that, I don't know, it builds up too much pressure. I feel a little frustration in trying to constantly redraw a line until it finally looks right. And so, for me, this method feels a lot better, where I scribble lines, and then I look at them and go, I need to carve off this piece. And you notice I'm using a low opacity as well. I mentioned in previous videos that I work around 50 opacity. You can see here that, no, I'm working at like 35, and sometimes lower. This isn't Photoshop anymore. Now I'm on a Mac, so I'm using, what's it called? Medibang, which is still pretty good, especially the fact that it's free. I'm not advertising, I'm just letting you know. It's very good. I definitely recommend it, especially for a free program. I can talk. I've used, what is it? Come on, GIMP, and it's decent. It's pretty good. It's got some really nice tools, but for some reason on my computers, on multiple computers I've used, it tends to lag, especially if you resize an image or do any like transform tools. Excuse me. I just ate food like an hour ago, so I'm still kind of burpy. It's too much information, but I just thought I'd share it. Anyway, yeah, I'm adding details to the ears now, adding that fluff around the hair, on the head. I think what's helping this picture, the more I look at it, is that I'm adding fluff in certain places, like on the neck, on the ears. I'm going to start adding it on like the elbows and the shoulders. I'm adding fluff in the right places to give him that fluffy look, but I'm still keeping him thin. So you can tell that the underlying body, his actual body, is still thin. And I'm adding some guidelines on the nose, you can see. I keep erasing them and then adding them again. They're mainly reminders. These guidelines don't have to stay, but the guidelines help you... They prevent you from making big mistakes later on. So I'm adding some guidelines around the nose to keep in mind that he has a thin snout. It's, and right here, ooh, here we go. If you look at what I'm doing with the eyes, I'm, with the actual pupils. Once again, I'm sketching a bunch of messy lines and then I carve an eraser on the inside. For me, that's such a time-efficient method. It's so much quicker instead of having to try and draw a perfect circle over and over. In this case, an oval. Instead of trying to obsess over that perfect oval, I just put a bunch of messy lines and then erase. It's good for painting or, you know, pencil line art stuff. And I do the same things, I'll show you guys in a future video, I do the same thing on paper. I will put a bunch of stuff down and then erase it away. So, if you're using pencil and paper, draw lightly. I cannot stress it enough. It is much easier to erase away light marks that are building up to create darkness as opposed to a dark line. Because if you press hard, it's really hard to erase. Anyway, I'm adding little bits of highlights, those little shines inside the eyes, and working on the nose, that little snout. Over time, some of this is kind of automatic to me. Some of these lines I'm not even really thinking about. And that's something you should keep in mind. Ooh, I need to catch my breath. And get some water. Something to keep in mind is that artists, especially, sorry, doing things one-handed. If, I'm not actually drawing, but I still am holding the recorder, so, yeah. Okay. I have a habit to talk a lot, which is handy for this video. Anyway, something to keep in mind about artists who seem to be really fast or efficient, and you're thinking, you know, how are they that good? I'm not that good, but think about it. Like, if you see artists who just seem to be so efficient and they know where to put their lines and they just draw so quickly, a big reason is because they've memorized the guidelines. So they're visualizing it in their head, but they don't have to put it on the paper. That's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm pulling up some photos for reference, but otherwise, a lot of it I'm visualizing in my head. It's a mix of the two. Like, you see some of my guidelines there for his arms, like where his elbows are. It's basically whatever you need in each picture. In some pictures, if I'm really comfortable with the character, I don't even draw that many guidelines at all. Excuse me. But when the character's giving you some trouble, like in this character, I kept playing with his anatomy a lot. I kept going, is this the right length? Is this the right amount of muscle? So I kept a lot of guidelines. And yeah, again, it helps you out the more guidelines you put into a picture. It just, to me, it takes off all the intense pressure, you know, the fact that, you know, wondering, am I going to get this right? Is this going to look good? What if I mess up? With guidelines, it doesn't matter if you mess up, because it's, you know, they're just guidelines, they're just reminders. And you just keep erasing it and then drawing it again over and over until you get in about the right place. And as you can see, as I'm doing here, I'm sometimes having to completely erase an arm or a joint completely. But I'll leave some of it there. It's a little messy sometimes because it adds a little bit of texture. It adds a little bit of reminder. So yeah, like on the bottom of his arm, of his bicep, which is, or bicep, sorry. Right near his elbows, those big lumps near his elbows. I'm kind of leaving those little curves there, and same with his knees. I'm leaving a lot of those lines. Well, I'm erasing some of them because I have to get the shape right. But I'll occasionally leave some of those curved guidelines there because it helps me think about the shape of the body and where the muscles are. So, yeah, especially when you're going to draw line art over it in a new layer, use guidelines a lot. Lots of guidelines. And as you'll see with these legs right now, I was having trouble making the legs look animal-like, so I'm doing this weird curve line that connects the thigh with the calf muscle, you know, the bottom of the leg. I'm doing that weird curve line from like the crotch down to the ankle. I'm doing that weird curve line, and that gives it a dog look. If you look at any cats or dogs, they have that kind of weird shape because there's like loose skin and fur, and it kind of like blends the legs together in that weird shape. Sorry if I hold the mic too close or too far away. Excuse me. So yeah, moving on to the feet, and sometimes adjusting the legs a little more, trying to get those lines correct. As for the tools I'm using, if sometimes people like to ask artists, what brushes are you using? I don't have a good answer. I just use the basic pencil, the basic circle. I sometimes will switch to other brushes. I have, as you see on the screen, I have acrylic, this one thing called Sumi, and a couple other things. They are useful for like texture, but you don't want to rely on them too much. I mean, play with them. Find ones that you do like, because they can help a lot. But, I mean, I also think it's useful to kind of push yourself to learn a texture with a basic pencil. At least, you know, some of the time. I have plenty of friends, you know, artists who use lots of different brushes, and they're actually really useful. So, I mean, play around with it. Find the ones that you like. Use those. You don't need fancy ones either. It's perfectly okay if you use some of the default brushes. It's up to each artist. But here I'm drawing the fingers of this paw. Something you should notice is that I'm kind of keeping the shape of a human hand. I hope I didn't mention this. Sometimes I lose track. But like, it's the form of a human hand, but then I'm adding each little finger is really chubby, like a dog paw. So it's, yeah, you can see how I'm trying to like find a middle ground. I'm keeping the kind of chubby, curved shapes that dogs and cats have with their paws. Excuse me. They have more bulk to their digits, to their fingers, whereas humans, we have really skinny fingers. So I'm basically visualizing a human hand in this pose, but then I'm adding the bulk of a paw, and adding those little claws, and erasing away. Once again, I'm carving. And just slowly creating the right shape. And as you can see here, I zoomed in a little bit to show you how I carve away the extra lines. Here's a little bit of a close-up for you. My favorite trick. I use it in literally every single picture I draw. Every single one you've seen. I do this carving technique all the freaking time. I should trademark that term. Carving. No one's used that before. It's kind of weird to do that angle of the paw pad on the thumb. I've seen plenty of artists do it better than that, and I'm definitely going to redo that one now that I look at it. If you don't see me redo it in this video, I'll do it in between videos. Because you will see more videos of this. I really, really, really enjoy this. So, hopefully you guys are learning stuff and I'm not too hard to keep up with. Because I'm the type who loves to ramble about art. I'm never bothered at all by anyone who wants to talk about art. I love art. So, yeah, this is a field day to me. I need to drink more water, because I'm not used to talking this fast all the time. Yeah, Because I usually am in my cave, so. But yeah, I'm adding some of that fur detail and showing some of the tendons and muscles in that arm. And some of those lines, like for the rib cage you see on that torso, those lines may not stay there, but they still help me, consider. And also, the fact that I drew them once, now I'm thinking about them, so I'll still remember it later. Oh, I'm so burpy right now, I'm sorry. I'll continue to add more fluff around the shoulders. I'm doing more carving for that fluff shape. And here's a big thing I've been learning this past year from a friend of mine, Aimee, who does a lot of fluffy characters. I did a video fan art of her comic in an earlier video, if you looked at my videos, Wolf Wizard. Anyway, I realized from her that fluff, when you're doing fur, should be very round at the ends. For literally years, I was always drawing tufts of fur, those little, fluffy shapes. I always drew them as sharp triangles. And looking back on it, it can work, but it kind of limits you. It doesn't quite create a soft look. Now I'm really starting to look at photos and realize how often the fur clumps, the little groups of fur, tend to have this round shape at the end. They look like they have a round shape, because technically it's a bunch of little hairs that are grouped together like a brush. And so from far away, when we see the animal, it looks like a bunch of round clumps. And yeah, that's something I finally am realizing. Excuse me. And so, yeah, that's the technique I'm using here more, and I'm glad I shared that with you. If anyone's struggling with fur and trying to make it look right and look soft, there you go. And also, don't worry if you hear all that coughing. It just happens with me. Especially since I just ate, and I'm not used to talking this much. I tend to get a lot of phlegm in my voice, so don't worry. I'm fine. I'm okay. So yeah, I think, as you can see, I'm just working on the feet paws, whatever you want to call them. The feet paws can definitely look more like a normal dog paw, because they're planted firmly on the ground as opposed to the hand paws, those paws that are also hands. They have to look a little bit more like a hand sometimes. And if I show this to Chad and he decides that he still wants the hands to look way more like a real paw, then I'll change it. Yeah, don't be surprised if when you see the video after this, if I've changed some stuff. That's just kind of the process. That's normal with art. It is always okay if, as you're drawing, the beginning stages of it don't look right. I think that's a big lesson for a lot of new artists. Don't worry if the beginning of it looks wrong, because look how often I'm erasing. It does not have to look perfect the first 3 or 4 times you draw it. It is going to you're going to learn, and that means putting marks on the paper and then erasing it. That is literally just the process. Even the fancy artists who use digital stuff, they're going to erase a lot. In fact, they'll probably erase more, because we like erasers. Erasers are nice. Alright, and I think that is all I have for today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you were able to hang in there for this whole video. I like doing videos this long. It felt good. So, thank you for watching. I will be doing more. I will be showing you how I do the line art. I think I'm going to do that next, because I'm going to do all the steps in this series. I think that sounds fun. I want to show you guys what I do. So, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions about art techniques that I should show, please leave a comment or contact me in direct messages on Twitter or DeviantArt. because I really appreciate it, and I want to be able to like teach you guys what I've learned and you know, share stuff with you guys because I really enjoy it. I think it's fun. I wish I had had more people to talk to when I was learning art. So if I can do that for someone now, it feels good. So yep, that will be it for right now. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. This is PenMark. See you next time.